So I started getting phone calls from their doctors and other people saying, what did you do? And I said, I didn't do anything, and don't tell anyone. Of course, the more I said that, the more everyone started talking. And then people started asking me to teach this. And I said, you have got to be insane. How do you teach something like that? The truth is, I'm standing here with no idea what I'm doing. I'm waving my hands in the air looking like an idiot. So you go outside, wave your hands in the air, you let me know what your neighbors start to say about you. And yet there was first then the researchers came, the scientists came, trying to study it. They were taking measurements of things around my hands and around my body, and they're saying, we're seeing aspects of light and information. I didn't even know what they meant by information, that we've never seen before, we think may well be here on this planet for the first time. I'm going, really? And how can you say something like that? And they said, well, we can't prove it, but we haven't seen it. Television came, talk shows came, and people started really insisting that I teach it. So I went to an adult class at a place called the Learning Annex in Los Angeles. And they gathered 25 students. I brought in all sorts of crazy notes I made for myself to try to see if I could teach this and give them, what I considered teaching information. And I got there and I looked at them and I knew immediately those notes were going to do nothing. So I opened up a massage table. I walked around the room first while they were in their chairs. I let them feel this in their hands. And their hands started to involuntarily move to and respond just like everyone else's. And then I let them show them sort of how to feel it. And I let them work with people on the massage tables, and other people were having physical responses. And as I put it, I guess I unleashed 25 new healers onto an unsuspecting planet, and I just tell you that my phone started ringing so much that I had to buy my very first computer. As a matter of fact, what that reminds me of is that right now I've started, I only did 3 of them so far, every Wednesday morning at about 8 a.m., if you can believe that hour. I'm not an early person, but that's when I'm doing it. 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning, Los Angeles time, Pacific time. I do a 30-minute, I guess it's, an IG live, I couldn't think of the word, an IG live where I will talk for a minute or two, and then when everyone's on, we chat for a minute, we take a volunteer, someone we don't know, they click the volunteer, and they come on from the screen. We play with this, and their fingers go into involuntary movements, and their eyes start to move, and they can't control it, and then they share what their experience was, and it's a whole lot of fun. So I'm planning on doing this every Wednesday morning from here forward, 8 a.m. LA time, so be there or be square.
Well, interestingly enough, we're doing our Healing Wednesdays every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. at night.
Los Angeles time.
Los Angeles time. So you picked a great day.
That's
and
fantastic. We can start with Eric and finish with Kryon. How brilliant is that?
Awesome.
So it was kind of interesting because I discovered that I was sort of right when I said you can't teach this. Now my perspective of it was a little limited. My perspective of it was some kind of a gift seemed to have awakened within me. I could find this, I could feel it, I could pull with it, and I thought, well, it's a gift, and you think of a gift as something being unique to a person. But what I found out was that reconnective healing is, as the researchers explained, this bandwidth of healing frequencies that includes everything we've had in the way of energy. All of the energy healing techniques, we're accessing parts of energy, and what reconnective healing does is it seems to release the little membranes. It was like there's a Reiki membrane, there's a Qigong membrane, there's a Jinshin membrane, and there's all the new techniques and the old techniques are different portions of energy sort of encased in loving membranes. And reconnective healing seems to allow all the membranes to open, and it reconnects all of healing, all the gifts of the techniques without even having to learn them. So what happens is something happens when we interact with this, what science today calls the reconnective healing intelligence, or the frequencies, and it awakens us or inspires us, catalyzes us, or we become a catalyst actually for this, and allows us to access this spectrum of healing so we can stop doing and instead become the healing. We can stop worrying about whether we're moving clockwise or counterclockwise or north or south or up or in, or what to do first and what to do second, and let go of the steps and let go of the fear and the protections, because all you become is light, and light has nothing to protect itself from, because darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is only an absence of light, and all of our fears that we protect ourselves from is merely us not allowing ourselves to shine as the light that we are. And once we grasp this, and that's really all it is, it's just a cognizant grasping of something that then moves beyond the thinking mind. Once we get this, we simply become the light that provides healings for those with whom we interact.
Let me ask this just because I love everything you've said. And it tweaks me when you say things that we've been teaching for years, because I just love it. And one of the things you said, that the definition actually of darkness is the absence of light, and vice versa. And I love that, because this has always been, it's just like what Kryon has said, light is active, dark is not. So, it's about if you have a dark room, you light a match and many more people can see. This is the kind of, it's almost like you're lighting a match in some way that the body starts to see all the connections and starts to work it together. Do you believe that this is innate in everybody? Is it there to be activated, or it's a bad word? Is it there to be awakened?
Here's my understanding of this, okay? Best as I can explain this. And I do want you to, I want to remind you, Lee, just in case, that yours was one of the very first books in this era I ever read, and one of the finest, your very first one. Your very first one, which was, it had that interesting, The End Times.
The End Times, correct.
And I want you to know that after these healings started, someone brought me The End Times. I said, I'm not going to read a book for that name, The End Times. Who wants to hear about The End Times? And then someone else brought it, and I said, no way. And then someone else said, you have to read this, and highlighted it. So I started looking at it, oh my God, what a phenomenal book. And it was like, I took it with me when I gave a presentation in Hawaii. I read it, I highlighted it more on the beach. I came back, and that's when I knew I had to reach you. And of course, as you joke about, I'm one of you people who haven't read your books, because I don't tend to read. I've listened to all of them on audio, but I read and highlight some of the ones when I'm really compelled. And your stories and your analogies just continue to enlighten the world. And I thank you so much for having the courage to bring Kryon forward. I don't really have words to thank you with, but I'm sure enough of you people will do that.
You're so kind. I'm going to bring up something now, and it's something that shows people you have a gift and you've learned how to teach it. This is how I tell people, and this is what you've explained too. I've seen people with gifts had no idea what they were and had no idea how to put it into a course or anything else. This is what you've been doing for years and helped so many. There is an expression we use in this business called an ambush interview. And this is where somebody pretends to be wanting to interview you and show off and everything else, and you show up, and all they do is give you trouble. And
I had one of those.
Well, you've got one, and if you want, and we don't have a whole lot of time, except that I want you to talk about this. They heard about you. It was a foreign country. I won't name it. And they said, we want to show up and have you tell us about it. And they showed up with a guy or a gal who had a withered hand from birth. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Would you?
So.
And you
wait. I don't remember the withered hand. I remember the one with, she was 86 and had arthritis.
That's it. But it was something that she'd either had for a very long time. In other words, it wasn't something that you would normally be teaching somebody how to heal themselves. It was like it'd been there a long, long time.
Sounds like they were ambushing you.
They were ambushing because there was no way they thought that this healer could ever change that.
So what
happened?
They were so nice. Well, here, I want to back up further into this. And I do want to finish by saying, I don't believe that this can be taught. What this happens is it is communicated.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
In other words, once you interact with it, it seems to ignite something. It sort of awakens something that's dormant within, I say, this living, walking generation of Earth, not Generation X or millennials, but I mean this living, breathing, walking generation. I believe we've been placed here with something dormant to receive and to be activated, and once we interact with it, it happens. So you don't access reconnective healing from sitting in a corner and oming any more than you sit in a high-rise hotel on a beach and sit in the corner and try to ohm the ocean in. It's not coming in. If it does, you better run. It's a tsunami. You have to actually stick your spiritual little butt in your spiritual little bathing suit and march it down to the ocean. And it's the same with this. You have to interact with it. But I know the story you're talking about. I had been out. I was a bit younger and more into enjoying a little bit of partying now and then. Just a couple of drinks in another country with a whole bunch of friends. And it was my first day in 8 weeks, and I was looking forward to sleeping in one morning, and the phone started to ring. And I picked up the phone, and it was this guy with a deep radio voice saying, "Are you aware that or we won't say which country it is, it's a big country, that the such and such medical association has convened a formal meeting about you and issued a national warning." And I started to laugh. And he said, because I thought it was a joke, and he said, "I fail to see the humor in it." Now, whenever anyone says I fail to see the humor in it, they're correct. They failed.
Thank you.
He absolutely failed to see the humor in it. Anyway, so he said it again. What's so funny? And I said, I really find it hard to believe that an entire country of this size, the medical association, would have a meeting and issue a warning about one American who's standing there waving his hands in the air. How very threatening. So I said, "Thank you, I'm going back to sleep." I thought I was. I hung up the phone, I went back to sleep for a moment. The phone started ringing again. The bell started ringing again. One of the people who brought me to the agencies there sent over 3 of their PR people, keeping everyone in the lobby. And suddenly, 3 or 4 national TV shows were all there at once being at bay. So one of them comes up, and they're very nice. And the guy's very nice and sets up and he said, "Listen, we're going to bring this woman, we're going to talk to you for a minute." So camera comes on, and he's really, Jekyll and Hyde, nasty. Camera comes off, and he's nice and friendly again. I'm thinking, what is going on here? So he said, "Listen, we're going to bring this woman on. Would you just let her see this in your hands and do a little healing?" I said, "Sure." So in comes this very tall, sweet, 86-year-old, I believe, woman with a very kind of a proper accent. And you could see the swelling in her knuckles, in her fingers. One hand she could close about 3 to 5 degrees, and the other maybe a full 12. And he said, "So when we come back on after this commercial break, we want you to heal her." I said, "She must have been like this for 45 years. I don't know that I can do a healing right there in that second." And he said, "Well, okay, fine. So when we come back, I'll explain why you refuse to do the healing."
That's right.
Oh, shit, that's even worse.
I've heard that. I've heard that. Yeah.
So she sits down very properly and kind of excited by the concept and shows me her hand, and I held my hand to and her fingers started to move, and then the other one started to move, and she goes, "Oh, I can move my fingers. Oh, look, I can close my hands." She was very excited. So anyway, that was nice, but the next show was coming. So that night, as my hangover subsided, you can't be spiritual without spirits. I mean, really, tell the truth. So that night, we had our staff there in like three of the different rooms that were close together. We had 3 different channels on because they were on 3 different main channels, all the shows at the same time. So we watched the first one, we watched the second one, watched the third one, and the healing's phenomenal. The interviews are phenomenal. The sweet, 86-year-old woman was very good. And then all of a sudden, I hear someone go, "Eric, back here, back here." I said, "What do you mean? It's over." "No, she's back." They had brought this woman to a big medical association representative, and he's interviewing her. So I watch, and she says, "Well, look, I can close my hand. I can move my fingers." And he said, "Well, that's not possible." She said, "But look, I can close my hands." He said, "That's not possible." And now, this very kind woman who had this healing, you could see something had welled up inside of her, and she's getting angry. She looks at him and she goes, "I can button my own sweater, look!" And she buttons it, and the guy loses all color. And he pauses, and then he says, "Well, all I can say is, you were very lucky." Lucky? What was she going to do? Her fingers were going to turn purple and fall off? The worst thing that can happen with reconnective healing is nothing never happens. If you're lucky, the healing comes in the form you anticipate. But I always say, if you're truly fortunate, the healing will come in a form you have not even dreamed of. One that this intelligence knows for us. We have to stop directing and intending specificity of healing in this world. We need to learn to let go of the personality ego and to sit back and say, hey, there is a higher intelligence. This intelligence knows where to go and what to do, and we just need to get out of its way and give it license to do so. And that is the main challenge to facilitating this clearly, because our human personalities want to direct and control. And when we do that, we constrict. When we let go, we allow the perfect orchestration of, call it God, call it love, call it the intelligence of the universe, call it what you will, to demonstrate itself to us. And that in itself is a reward. Reconnective healing in itself is its own reward, and yet everyone benefits.
You know, Eric, I just love how the key things for me is that you said you can't teach this stuff, and the reason is because we have innate intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it's simply, I love that. And this is all in line with Kryon saying that we are now being empowered to connect with the innate intelligence. And I love that you're able to teach people this getting out of the way, getting out of their own way to connect with something that wants to be connected to.
Why do you think there's so much pushback when people see this and it works with the healers that are professional on the earth? I mean, wouldn't you think that they would say, this is outstanding, I've dedicated my life and given an oath to healing people, but they just turn it off?
I thought that healers would be the most open and mainstream medical would be the least. And it's really turned out to be quite different. A lot of the healing teachers confuse teaching nothing with teaching nothing. In other words, they equate nothing with nothingness. Yeah. And a lot of the times as students, we've invested our money to learn techniques and methods. And as teachers, we are invested because that's how a lot of teachers make their money, by teaching techniques and methods. And really, it's time for us to become, everyone, the teachers of the teachers. We're not here to stay at the same level. I know a lot of times people will, say, well, it's the same thing that Jesus did or this, that, and the other. And I'll say, but you know what? Maybe. But Jesus said these things, and I'm paraphrasing very loosely, and Lee, you know the exact quote, and I don't. But essentially, these things that I do, you shall do and more. Mm-hmm. And first of all, people get upset with the concept of the same things, and they become really infuriated and more. I'm saying you can't pick and choose. If you're going to follow the teachings of Jesus, what makes you the person to decide which ones are right and which ones are wrong? We are here to grow and evolve. Healing, people will say, I don't need a healing, there's nothing wrong with me. It's not about something being broken. Healing is not just about fixing something that wasn't working. That's a very limited perspective. Healing is about our human evolution. So everyone needs or is here for healing because we are all here to evolve. This is part of even our teaching, even in this time of COVID, for example, we learn to evolve. Thank goodness that in the teaching, as we teach around the world, and, Lee, you and I, and now Monica too, we've ended up teaching and sharing the stage in multiple countries, on multiple continents. And now there comes COVID, and now there comes physical distancing.
That's actually the last question I wanted to ask you in this program is, what is it you're doing that would help with it?
Well, fortunately, about 2 years ago, we created a program called The Portal. Now, we had already been teaching in our live programs how to do Reconnective Healing distance sessions. So you don't need to be in the same room. You don't need to be in the same country. Jillian and I facilitate distance sessions. People who go to the website and look us up to schedule them with us, we do those. But everyone that we taught in Reconnective Healing, if you go to the website and look at the directory, if someone who speaks your language, for example, can facilitate reconnective healing distance sessions, so you don't need to be in the same breathing room or anything else with them. You don't need to be in the same country. But what we created is a program called the Portal. The portal, the doorway, the opening. And what the portal does, we did this 2 years ago, is it's a phenomenal way of teaching. It's 8 hours plus an additional extra 2 hours that we include with it. But it's not like 8 hours of online. My nature, just the way I do not really enjoy intense reading of books, my nature wouldn't sit there.
Open your eyes now. And this next part of the program feels special for Lee and I because we love it when we can come together with you, speak of personal things, and also answer some of the questions from our membership. We have had so many questions submitted about Kryon's message that was given about the new prophecy for old souls. So we wanted to dedicate this part of the program on that topic, even though it was several months ago, because we wish to clarify some of the things that people are specifically asking about. So if this is new information for you, if you've never heard about this prophecy, I encourage you to go back and watch the Wednesday evening episode that was given on March 6th of 2024. But here is a brief summary of what was given in that channel. Point number 1, when the future old soul arrives on the planet again, they will be without karma or the Akash. So no more Akash, no more karma. Instead, the emerging 24th chromosome pair is the new life template, which delivers wisdom and mastery. Super excited about that point myself. Point number two, the graduate old souls will receive esoteric wisdom through enhanced intuition, which is part of mastery teaching. And then point number 3 is that the new human will be given life instructions from their soul, not from an old energy Akashic system. And when I first heard that information, it felt like a door had been opened to even greater levels of awareness. And for me, everything expanded. And there were so many dots being connected and really understanding why we are moving into a new paradigm and why this is the shift in consciousness and how things work. So I loved hearing that others had similar experiences as well. And of course, whenever Kryon gives us startling new information or profound revelations, there are always loads of questions that follow. In fact, there were heaps of questions submitted in the portal that were all asking about the prophecy. So the first question that we wish to answer, it comes from Dawn, Beth, Catalina, Jenny, Marlene, Joy, and Rosemary, and probably others that didn't submit the question but thought the same thing. And basically their questions were asking the same thing but using different words. So I've created one question that best summarizes what they're all asking, and here it is. Question: can we release our karma and delete our Akashic records in this life and not have to wait for our next incarnation? And if not, what is the point of this life?
I love that whole question. I like the answer. What's the point? Well, when I answer this question, it helps me to go even further in what Kryon has indicated is happening. And that's what this show is all about, where we can go slower. I can back up and give you some background. First, what Kryon gave, remember, it's a prophecy. Now, a prophecy in nature is about the future. So everything Kryon has indicated for the old soul is about the future. It's not about right now. So we're going to fill in the gaps in just a moment. So don't just assume that the future life Kryon speaks of is going to mess up this one. This is just the way it is. I'm going to say something right now that's going to apply to almost every question today. I want you to take this to heart, truly. This new information about our Akash, our 24th DNA chromosome pair, and the future teaching of mastery is a wonderful, benevolent new system that honors all of us, the ones here and in the future. There's no bad news here. The only challenge is how we interpret it, especially how we interpret it in 3D based upon our training. Quite often, we decide the outcome based on a very linear thinking is that it's going to be a problem. We're all programmed to think differently spiritually. These programmings, it's most of the programs we received, we inherited very, very early from other spiritual systems, if you think about it. So I'm just going to back up and make some statements, and don't write me letters, but this is my truth. What I learned in church is about a very black and white set of rules from a supposedly very loving God. And I'm not going to quote it, but I'll say this. Here's what I learned. If you don't get baptized a certain way, you're going to be punished for eternity because of it. I immediately asked when I heard that, even as a child, but what if the person never heard about that? When they arrive to the gates of heaven, they're going to be punished because they weren't baptized correctly? Or if they go to the wrong church and worship God incorrectly, will they be punished? Because that's what I was told as well. The answer I was told from those questions I asked, even when I was small, is yes, they will. Those are the rules of God. God works in mysterious ways. I keep saying that. My response was, it just doesn't seem right. That's a child questioning love. And here's the answer the church gave me again. Who are we to question the majesty of God? And later I said, I am. The God that created me in his image will love all of creation and create benevolent rules, allow all of us to share in that majesty and glory, not just a few who follow your ideas. Those things you told me, I'm talking to the church, seem like men's rules, not God's rules. So here's what I'm getting at. No matter what the questions here today, the answers will be benevolent and loving and will make sense, spiritual sense, and they will honor the human for this incarnation as well as the next. So listen, here it comes. Expect love and expect compassion from Spirit. God is love. But we tend to build in dysfunctions to our very questions. We really do. We expect God to do what our churches told us happens. So here's the answer to your question. The direct and loving answer that Kryon has given to us all on this subject is that the present old soul is currently awakening to this very new powerful system right now as you sit in your chair. This is what the shift is all about. We absolutely are beginning to drop the old energy that we don't need and activate the new things that we do need. Kryon gave us very specific information that there are enormous energies on this planet right now designed to help us exactly with this, to fight the dark energy that's starting to appear just because we are starting to create light. I speak of the system of the nodes and the nulls. We're going to work on that as time goes by. If you want to know more about that, it's Monica's specialty, actually, and we'll get into that. So for all of you, this is why you are here. And this has been the teaching of Kryon all along. In this new energy, you can reframe your entire existence here of what you thought you were here for or what you were taught you couldn't do. Every single old soul who is hearing this can know that what is in the future for you in your next incarnation is also here for you to pick up and use while you're here. That's the answer. So to circle back to that question again, we can release our karma and delete our Akash now instead of waiting for the next life. So the answer is yes for the old soul. And the entire reason for giving you that information now is because you are dearly loved. Expect benevolent answers to these linear questions.
So here is another question that some have been asking about the prophecy and this new system that no longer has the Akash as the main engine that drives spiritual advancement. The question is this: will we lose our talents and interests because that comes from the Akash?
I'm going to do something now that'll help everyone answer for yourself almost every question you have about these new systems that Kryon is speaking of in the future. And by the way, that question is a good one. I mean, truly, if you take a look at the system and what Kryon has said, will you lose it? But we're going to do something fun. I hope it's fun for you. And it sounds a little outrageous. Okay. It's called role playing. Imagine you are God. Take a breath, take a breath. And you're in love with every soul on the planet. Take a breath. This is role playing. Imagine you're God. And there is one soul in particular that you look at who is incredibly talented and who has received amazing musical and artistic abilities through years of inherited Akashic past life experience. They're just a monster talented person. And through the beauty and amazing heartfelt abilities of this person, they continue to bless thousands through their music, their lyrics, or his or her songs. You're God, remember, and you're looking at this person. So here comes this new system, one that tells us that the Akash will no longer drive who we are, and information that karma is also being eliminated. Okay, what are you going to do, God? Remember, you're role-playing. Shall we strike all that beauty away? Shall we eliminate all that practice over lifetimes of work and musical interests? Stop. Just stop for a moment. Don't think about anything but compassion first. Just think about what is the compassionate answer to that. What's the first impression when you think of a compassion here to make that decision? God, what will it be in your role-playing? I think you and I both know the answer. That individual will stay as they are through lifetime after lifetime, growing in talent and ability to help humanity with their music. Okay, now go ahead and ask the burning question. Well, yeah, but didn't Kryon tell us that the Akash would not be there anymore? If so, how will that person have that? They're going to lose out on that Akashic energy. How? There's all these linear questions. What if I told you instead here that these wonderful positive attributes that were formerly Akashic slowly became a part of this soul's mastery? And what if it stayed? What if I remind you that the attributes of mastery will be the new teaching? Are you getting this? Are you seeing the benevolence of this? So these become very linear questions for a very loving and multidimensional God who will always give benevolence within these kinds of systems. They're not black and white. They're not as you were told or you read in some scripture where if you do something wrong, you're going to get punished. The answer is that you will continue with these things that have blessed your life. But instead of those things coming from an old Akashic energy, because that's gone, they'll be fully implanted into the 24th set of chromosomes. Can you see how much more magnificent and grander humans are becoming? Can you see why Kryon says light is winning and that darkness doesn't have a chance?
Oh, thank you so much, Lee. I feel that your answer is so helpful and it gives us a glimpse into the mind of God, even though God doesn't have a mind because God is God. But I think everyone understands what I mean. Lee's answer demonstrates how we're often so linear, but God is not. Okay, here's another question about the prophecy, and it comes from Doris, who's in Switzerland. And Doris is asking, what about our memories of family, deceased persons such as our children, and the love we have for them, the connection and the experiences? And what about the memories and training in Lemuria and other knowledge, for example, our Pleiadian ancestry? What if my son doesn't awaken in this life? Is our connection gone in the next life?
You know why this is important? Because we have stressed, even in the Lemurian teaching wheel and all these things before this prophecy, that all this Lemurian teaching is in your Akash, and we're reawakening to it. So I love this question because somebody is thinking through it. Thank you, dear, for asking this. Doris, you want to do role-playing with me again on this one too? Let's not. Or can we agree to find the least linear answer and the most benevolent one possible? First and foremost, your Lemurian teachings may have started within your Akash at first, but slowly they went to those 24th pair of invisible master-laden DNA parts that we keep talking about. This is the lineage of an old soul that you are. That's what was given to you in Lemuria, teachings of mastery, the experience of life, all of the issues and the problems and how to solve them. That is the beginning teaching of mastery. That DNA, those 24 set of chromosomes, that's where the most sacred things you ever learned will eventually be transferred to. And that's the next level for you. And those were transferred accordingly. So they are now in the 24th pair. They're not in the Akash anymore, and they wouldn't be. It's only logic that if you were taught mastery, they would go into the places where mastery is now kept and taught to you. We must start talking about what we gained along the way instead of what we might be losing through an old energy Akash leaving. Here's another statement. This is I will make it from Kryon, who talks to me all the time. It's for you, it's for others, it's for all of us. Here it is. All the most magnificent things in your life, your talents to help others, your relationships that are sacred, love, your star ancestry, all of it now resides in that place of mastery within your DNA. Spirit will never take away these things, no matter how you decide to categorize them in the area of Akashic experience. Back to me. As far as your son is concerned, or for anyone else listening or watching, I have this news. Those relationships and the potentials, those were never in the Akash. They're all attributes of soul sharing, a completely different subject that Kryon has talked about a lot. So those that you may meet in this life, that you may still meet in the future of this life, all of those, they're almost completely dependent on your soul's willingness to allow it. This is a soul function, not an Akashic function. Those you've loved and lost, they don't go into your Akash, they go into your soul sharing. It's complex, as we have said before, but it doesn't belong in the discussion of Akashic energy. So again, we give you an unexpected answer from a very loving source who really knows you.
So as we continue I'm just like, I'm still processing that beautiful answer from Lee and from Kryon. But let's continue the discussion about the prophecy, because there were a few more questions that were submitted. Marja from Scotland and Donna from Canada were both asking about the new prophecy and how it would affect Gaia, the crystalline grid, and the cave of creation. But before Lee answers that question, I think it will be helpful if I give brief definitions for these terms, because they've come from Kryon, and I'm aware that many of you may not have heard of it before. So let's start with the crystalline grid. The crystalline grid, as defined by Kryon, is a spiritual grid that lays over the planet's surface. It records and remembers human actions and emotions. So it remembers everything humans have done and where they have done it. Human activity and vibration directly affect the crystalline grid and vice versa. In other words, the crystalline grid receives and retains the vibration
of human consciousness, and then it transmits this vibration back to the human DNA. And it talks to Gaia. And the Gaia part talks to anything crystalline within the Earth's crust where humans live. The crystalline grid is also, in addition, it's quantumly aligned with the cave of creation. Okay, let's talk about the cave of creation. As defined by Kryon, it is a real place that will never be found on this planet. It connects and unites the physical to the spiritual and the multidimensional to the dimensional. It's a place where there are crystalline structures within a memory vault